Gordon is our surprise guest today. So he is a Cincinnati agent as well. Super awesome. His team does an amazing job. So we're super thankful to have him on. And today's topic, we'll get into wins and stuff here in a second, but today's topic is going to be how we see this NAR lawsuit affecting working with investors, agents, what it could mean as a benefit, what it could possibly entail just in general, and how it might just help investors as well. So, super excited for all of that. Does anybody want to, before we dive into the topic, does anybody want to start in on their wins? If not, I can, if anybody would like to volunteer. Otherwise, I will just it can be business wins, it can be personal wins, it could be any wins. Gordon, you got any? And then I will pick some other volunteers, some
Sure.
voluntold.
I actually have a pretty unique win here. I'd like to brag upon my partner and wife, Tidra. So we have an investor that we're working with out of New York. Not a first-time investor, but first-time commercial multifamily outside of their region. So they come to Cincinnati, as a lot of investors have recently, looking for multifamily property opportunities. So we came across a situation where perfect property, it really meets the investor's needs, but the financing portion of it became a challenge. They went from 25% down to 45% down, which pretty much detonated the deal. So luckily, the loan officer on this deal has a previous relationship with both the buyer and seller on previous properties. So we put together a conference call today. And technically, our contract is out. It's done. Our client has lost non-refundable earnest money, thousands of dollars. So it was very painful for all parties, but we came together, and Tidra, my partner, she helped mediate and navigate a big win here, lowering the price by $50,000, getting credits from the seller, and moving forward to a closing. So,
Nice.
I mean, it went from, absolutely detrimental to, hey, we actually have something here. We're going to see a closing in the next couple of weeks. So that's a huge
That's
win for us.
awesome. To clap that. We love to hear that. Always a good time.
I
Good
had a
job,
win as
Tidra.
well.
Let's hear it.
I just had my first transaction, and actually, it turned out to be a birthday cake. I was there to get the listing and also bring a buyer. So just closed on it yesterday.
Awesome. To clap that. First deal's always huge, man. That's awesome. That's super awesome.
I got a good one, Eric.
Let's hear it, Addison.
So I'm working on this deal where this borrower has been renting the property they're living in. Not a real expensive property. It's like $100,000 property out in Middletown. Very young couple, school teacher and a mechanic. Their credit was pretty bad when they came to me. They were trying to get the deal done with the bank, and they had like a 608 credit score. I actually, as of today, got her credit rescored up to a 646. She paid off, I think it was like $180 credit card that was almost near the limit. Score
Nice.
jumped, and it looks like I'm gonna be able to get the deal done before she gets evicted because she got an eviction notice last week.
Oh
So very,
no.
very happy. The grandma's her real estate agent on the buy side for it. So everyone was super happy I was able to get it saved.
Awesome. To clap that. We love to hear it. Do we have any others? Any other wins? Anybody? If not, we can start in on the topic. All right. I think we'll go ahead and do that. So like I said, kind of did a quick introduction of what we're expecting today. We're going to be discussing the lawsuit. We like to start these meetings open too with obviously I'm not Randy, so he's out traveling. So Randy did not go blonde. But I'm taking over for the meeting today. Addison, anything you want to update us with? Loan side of things, rate wise, what's going on in the market? Anything that is sticking out to you?
This week's actually a good week. I think last month when we did this, it was a bad week to talk about the rates. But this
Yep.
this month it's actually really the past 7 to 10 days, things have really started to go down. I just did a presentation today for a real estate brokerage here, kind of showing them the 5-day, 1 month, 3 month, 6 month, 1 year, 5 year treasury bill. And I mean, we're definitely not down to where we were even at our lows last year, but we're down to about where we were back in December last year when business randomly had that pickup, at least here in Cincinnati, from interest rates going down. So I mean,
Yeah.
if you have any borrowers that don't have a loan locked, I would probably go ahead and lock it. I mean, rates are down probably over almost 100 basis points in the past week. I mean, that right now nothing's in the sevens unless you have horrible credit. Everything's down in the sevens. I mean, in the high sixes. Even today, I saw rates as low as 6% flat for a conventional borrower with less than 2% buy down, which I haven't seen in a long time. A few weeks ago, that probably would have been like a 5-point buy down. So things are getting a little better. Now, we saw this happen back in December, like I said, we saw it happen a little bit in March. And then they shot back up and for April and most of May. But maybe this time they actually really start going down some more. I know the job data and the CPI helped some. But hopefully this time they really start going down and maybe we end up land really in the lower sixes with a rate with little to no buy down for the summer, which would just be incredible.
Yeah.
That's the
Nice.
biggest thing as far as interest rates that I've seen.
Yeah, hopefully the CPI data came in this past week lower than expected. So if that continues to trend that way, then hopefully we can continue to see rates lower as we go into the summer, which would be ideal, especially as we get into the busy season in most areas. So definitely keeping an eye on that. And it makes a huge difference for anybody that's wondering like how big of a difference, that can make. Is me and Addison had a client that was pre-approved. She'll close tomorrow, but was pre-approved. And rates jumped up last month of the CPI data. And she went from like no buy down, solid rate to she had to buy down. She had, a 2-point buy down to keep the rate similar. So makes a huge difference. So just keep an eye on that as we go in, and hopefully it continues to go.
I think
lower.
that was what, an extra $4,500 for that borrower, to where hindsight 2020. I mean, at the time when I
Yeah.
locked it, it was the right thing to do, no doubt in my mind. But now hindsight 2020, if I would have locked it this week, it would have saved the borrower a lot of money.
Yeah, it would have been super risky. We'd have spent the next 30 days probably stressing out like crazy. So we did the right thing. But
Yeah.
that's the big difference it makes. And I think that's something that we have to keep an eye on as agents and for our clients, just to see what's going on. So awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get started then. I'll do a quick introduction. I know Gordon jumped on a little bit, but Gordon has been an agent up in Cincinnati about as long as I have. I want to say going on 7 years, right, Gordon?
Actually licensed in January 2015.
Okay, so much longer than I have. Just kidding. Going on 10 years. So Gordon is amazing. His team is amazing. He works with a ton of investors up in Cincinnati. I can easily recommend his team. If either us or Gordon, you can't really go wrong with agents in Cincinnati. So if anybody's got any business they want done up there, just reach out to us or Gordon. But we're really going to be talking about this NAR lawsuit today. Kind of the differences that it's made with agents, how it's going to affect agents' business, but also I think one of the big things we want to talk about is what does this mean for investors? So anybody who isn't sure of the change that just took place a couple months ago, the NAR is now going to have to come out as a buyer agent. You're going to have a buyer agency signed before you show properties. So before, it was normal for if you listed a property in the MLS, you would have the broker co-op listed in the MLS. It would state whatever percentage it is. There is no normal percentage. We have to shy away from saying that. It's always been that way anyways. It's always ranged on homes that we've shown and done things with. But there were some lawsuits where sellers felt like they were being taken advantage of and being required to pay the commissions. So with this lawsuit, NAR basically agreed that it will not be listed in the MLS, the co-op commission percentage, and that a buyer's agent is going to have a buyer broker agreement signed before they start to show properties. So going forward as agents, what we're probably going to see changes is we're not going to be able to see in the MLS that the seller is offering a 2 or 3% commission. It's negotiable on who pays it, how much is paid, when it's paid, and everything like that. So that's kind of the overview of what is changing here soon. I think it goes into effect July or August. They keep pushing it back. It was supposed to be like first week of July, then it was end of July. I believe now it's supposed to be sometime in August. So Gordon, what I kind of wanted to have the conversation with is how do you think this is going to affect working with some of your investors? Like, what are some ways that you see this being a positive for your investors that you work with?
Yeah. So first off, I just want to say thank you very much for the introduction. Super appreciate that. Ever since we met all those years ago at the Field Zertle Panera, you had greatness. As a young agent, I knew you were going to achieve great things, and look at the
I
following
appreciate it.
that you've built. So thank you. I'm honored to be here.
We're glad to have you.
Fantastic topic because there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of questions. And we really have not seen how this is going to truly play out. As you mentioned, they've been kicking the can down the road, another 30 days, maybe another 60 days. In all reality, that may be next year when we finally see this thing roll out the whole way. So, we definitely see some challenges up front. Regular buyers, people that are buying homes, your average home in our area is just around $300,000 now. So your average home buyer, if they have to come up with a down payment, 3, 5, 10, 20, 25%, pay their closing costs, which can be 3, 4, 5% as well, and then also have to pay an additional 3% or some other percentage that's negotiated on the exclusive buyer agency, it's going to bankrupt them. They don't have the savings. Just looking around, we are facing serious inflation across the board. Gas prices, homes, groceries, food, clothing, etc. Everything is more expensive now. And I think savings are really taking a huge hit. So I think this is going to greatly affect those buyers for sure. Those that don't have, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 saved up minimum to walk into the front side of a real estate purchase. So that will be, I think, our first benefit to investors. Most investors, once they get the ball rolling, they have savings. They flipped a couple properties, they have a couple rentals, and they have some cash sitting on the side, whether it's from a 401k or a 1031 exchange where they sold another property, or just something that they saved up and whittled over the years. They have a war chest to go play with, and they will be able to write better offers. They will be able to react more quickly. They'll be able to close more quickly. And I think that will be a huge benefit to the investor, where they can pick up more opportunity that buyers are going to have to walk away from.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that probably one of the most misunderstood things I've understood from this lawsuit talking to other agents is that there are agents that think, okay, the buyer always is going to have to pay the commission. And that's not necessarily going to be the case. When we sign these buyer broker agreements with clients that are looking to purchase a property, it's not stating in there who's going to pay the commission. It's just stating in there what the commission can be up to. So if I sign one with a buyer, it might say, my commission is going to be up to 3%. And whether it's paid by the seller or the buyer, it will be purchased. So it's still negotiable. I know me and Addison have cut our commissions plenty of times to help a buyer be able to, with closing costs or something like that, to be able to help them get through, or repairs come up or something unexpected comes up. So it's going to be Abraham, I think you're unmuted. But it's going to be one of those things where it can still be paid by the seller. It's just not going to be marketed as that way. And I do agree, Gordon. I think that investors are going to be in a spot where the benefit is, if you're an investor and you want to find properties, there's no better way to get agents looking for it than to say, hey, I will pay you 3% commission for every deal you find, as long as the deal makes sense with your commission paid into it. And a lot of my investors have always been that way. No matter what, if we find it through a wholesaler, if we find it off market, there's a 3% commission as long as my numbers make sense.
Yeah.
And the benefit there for an agent is, I'm going to be motivated to work for you if I know you're going to pay 3% as long as I bring you a deal. So I'm going to have that incentive to really go out there, hit the pavement, and kind of be that acquisitions.
Yeah, I think
Have,
what you said there right
okay.
there is a point that I wanted to bring up today was that most investors, they're very savvy about their numbers, right? If
Yeah.
you look at the standard buyer, it's payment. You go to buy a car, it's payment. You know, you go to buy a house, it's payment. Can I buy this house, and how much house can I buy? But as long as it fits my DTI and my payment, right? Even if that payment's less than what you could possibly do, and they have that budget, it's all about the payment. But investors, they have all the other numbers. You know, how much am I putting up front? What's my purchase price? What's my potential exit strategy?
Yep.
ARV numbers, taxes, all this stuff. So they are going to, you know, the professional ones, they're going to underwrite their own deals or even have somebody on their team that underwrites their purchases. And they're going to take that extra 3% and say, okay, this is a cost of business, right? This is 3% that we're adding into our acquisition cost that we're going to pay our agent because the agent is out there doing great work for us, bird dogging deals, giving us at least a little bit of underwriting up front to see if it matches our buy box, if you will. And we're going to pay them for bringing these deals our way. Most investors are used to working with agents, they're used to working with wholesalers, and they're used to paying some sort of fee. You know, I do it, you do it. It's just part of the game, unless you're setting up your own marketing scheme. You know, you've got your postcards and your ISA and all that stuff. Most
Yeah.
most investors don't have that, so they're paying a fee in exchange for that.
Absolutely. And I think if you're an investor and you're looking for deals, I mean, as crazy as it sounds, but let's say you have an agent that you know, like, and trust is going to find you deals. Maybe you go above 3%. Maybe you say, hey, look, we can go all the
Sure.
way up to 4% if you find a deal. You bring it to me first. And as an investor, I think that's going to be something that is going to be a huge benefit. You'll be able to roll it in to there as well. Maybe the seller is willing to pay 3%, and you as an investor are willing to pay 1% to the agent, but now you kind of have a reason to get it going. Or maybe you have a ton of agents in your market that are really good at finding deals, and there's a lot of competition for it, and it could even drive down agent prices. So maybe you have
Sure.
15 agents you know that can find you deals. As an investor, you might be able to say, hey, you know, if the seller's not willing to pay it, I'll give you 2% or something like that, and you can find a way to make it work. So
Sure.
I think in general it's going to be different in every situation, but as an investor, I think you can really leverage it. And I think
Yeah.
as an investor, agents are going to be they're going to be more apt to want to work with investors. There's going to be a lot of buyers, retail buyers, that are going to go to the listing agent instead of wanting to work with an agent or forego working with anyone to save that commission. So I think there's going to be more agents that are going to be open to, who knows, driving for dollars or sending out mailers or cold calling, you know, tax abatement lists and things like that to try and get deals for you to earn their income. So that's definitely one of the benefits. What's a negative you can think of on
I've
top of
got
your
one
head?
for you.
Yeah, let's hear it.
From personal experience, even before any of this NAR lawsuit came up, you know, I've been working with investors as a part of my business since the very beginning because I realize they're usually dispassionate about the whole situation. They're easy to work with. They communicate well, and they bring you multiple pieces of business. Plus, they know a lot of people in their network that can refer. But on the other side, a lot of these investors, they don't want to pay a full commission when it comes time to list that property that you help them buy on the flip. So
Yeah,
they might want to do a 5% and 3% to the buyer. But I've already heard conversations with local investors here and had some personal conversations as well, where they're seeing this as a potential opportunity for them to get 3% more profit on the backside when they go to sell. It's like, oh,
yeah,
hey, I don't have to pay the agent that's bringing a buyer anymore, right? I don't have to advertise that I'm going to pay them anymore, right? So their buyer can pay them. Invariably, that's going to have a lot of kickback effects. You know, you're
yeah,
going to have lower sales prices, homes sitting on the market longer. You'll have buyers that can't buy the property because they don't have the extra savings. Um, you know, there's a lot of potential things that could happen as a downside to this that may look like today's investor benefit, you know, saving 3%, but in reality, it might actually bite them in the end.
yeah, absolutely. And I think, and I know me and you have talked about this when this first came down, but I don't know if we have anybody in Washington State that's licensed here, but this has actually been kind of the norm in Washington for, I want to say, a year and a half. I talked to a broker there, and they have some pretty interesting stats about for sellers who decide to not pay a broker commission or a co-op commission. Those homes tend to sit longer and they tend to sell for less. And I think that's just human nature. I mean, if you're an agent, you are not supposed to, look at that commission and do it one way or another. But Washington, it's not listed. But if I'm calling a broker and I find out my buyer doesn't have the ability to pay my commission, or if I'm talking to the agent and they're like, hey, seller's not paying commission, I go to my buyer. If I go, hey, I know you love this property, but you have to pay me something, like we have this in writing, are you willing? A lot of buyers will say no, like I'm not going to go an extra 3%. That's just, I'm, for whatever reason, there is kind of a psychological, hurdle for that. So what we've seen, or what people in Washington have seen, is those homes do tend to sit. So I think one of the cautions for investors would be, don't do that. Now is the time, I think, to offer that 3% buyer commission, or 2.5%, or 2%, or offer something up, because there's going to be sellers that decide to try and save the 3%. But oftentimes in business, when you try and cut cost measures like that, it's not great. I mean, you're paying an agent for bringing a buyer. So, it's a benefit. It is a huge thing. And if everybody, if every seller in your market's like, I'm not offering any co-op, that's a huge advantage. If you're a seller, like I would think as a seller, I'd be like, hey, here's 4%. I don't care. Just bring me a buyer. Let's get it sold, especially if the market starts to soften. So,
Yeah. You make a great point there. Look at Chipotle today. Their business is getting blocked out, walked out. Customers are just running and never coming back. And you look at an interview with the previous CEO, and he said, I didn't talk about portion control. In fact, I said, give the people what they want, give as much as you possibly can, because then they will come back.
Yep.
Very similar situation where we're seeing them cost cut on the front end where the customer sees it, right? They might cost cut on the back end, with purchases or supply or whatever. But when it's with the actual product and the customer's like, hey, I'm not getting what I want here, customers are going to complain. They're going to talk about it. Early in my career, I had a broker say, hey, look, if you do wrong by somebody, they will go out and tell 10 people. They'll tell 100 people. If you do right by somebody, they'll tell their people that are close to them. But having that negative effect by saying, you know what, we're not going to offer compensation,
Yeah.
really have that negative effect for you, for sure.
Yeah. And I think it's just something that it's going to be, it's going to be a way as an investor. It's almost like thinking of it as a business cost. So I've talked to a lot of the investors we work with, and they see, paying for direct mailers. They pay for, text campaigns. They pay for driving for dollars. They pay for VAs, everything you're paying for. It can be wrapped up into one. And that's why me and Randy kind of started this Investor Agent Nation, which was, you can really leverage, as an investor, you can really leverage a good agent to bring you deals. They can bring you business. They can make you money. They have to be worth their weight in gold. Like you don't want to pay an agent who's just sending you stuff on the MLS that's retail value and is, blowing you up. A lot of times what we'll try to do for our investors is kind of dig through it, sift through kind of what we're seeing, and send it to them. Now that depends. If they're ready to go and they're like, hey, we're ready to purchase right now, we'll do that. If I get an investor that's like, I'm probably not going to be looking for 6 months, I have too much going on to sit there and sift through deals and say, hey, in 6 months, let me really get you an idea of what it's going to look like. But when you're ready to go, we're ready to help any way we can. So you're, in a way, you have to kind of look at this commission as like a new business cost. And again, doesn't mean that it's always going to be that way. Addison, I do want to ask you a question, because this was something we talked a little bit about, but we're even seeing a change. Fannie and Freddie, I believe, they're allowing this to be rolled into the loan. So, and it's not going to count towards closing costs. So a conventional loan, you can ask for up to 3% closing costs, and they're not going to count the 3% closing costs if you're paying a 3% agent fee. So you can ask for a total of up to 6%, correct?
That is correct. And I know they're working on FHA and government right now too.
Yeah.
I think we're supposed to hear something in the next 2 weeks to a month on the government side, is what I've been told. And
Okay.
I'm assuming you can do something similar with the government side. I mean, that's the borrowers who typically don't have money and have the
Yep.
lower credit score. So I would think they almost need to be more sympathetic to the government loans than the conventional. That's just my personal opinion, but that's what I would think.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. I think the only one we were still waiting on was possibly VA, and I believe the last time I talked to somebody who had anything that kind of knew about it was that FHA they're pretty much going to allow it, and then VA they're just trying to figure out the best way to word it, but it should be good to go. And I think me and Randy talked about this, and the way they're going to do it is like the way you word the credit for the agent. So, um, and also having a seller do it. Like you can have a seller do it as well if you say, hey, we're going to come in at 150, but we'll go in at 155 if you pay the 3% commission. Um, and I'll give a good example of this. One of the agents on our team in Cincinnati, she looked at a property, and as ironically enough, the property had been sitting for 7 months, which Gordon, you can attest to in Cincinnati, that does not happen ever.
Unless
They
something's
started
wrong.
yeah, they started super high on price. They lowered it down a ton. And then literally as soon as the NAR lawsuit thing came out, you could tell in our MLS because it keeps a history. They dropped the commission from like 1.5% to 0%. That's fine, no problem. So our agent called us. She's a newer agent. She was freaking out. She's like, "What do I do?" And I'm like, "Call the agent." It was at like 130. They started at like 210. It's like, "Call the agent and ask." His got her investor wasn't going to pay more than 130. I said, you just have to net his offer to be 130. So we ended up, I think, doing 125, and the investor would pay the 3% to our agent, so like 3,500. And it was written in there. So there's going to be changes like that. And they ended up accepting the offer. So it's something where you just, as an investor, you're just going to have to get used to it. And then as agents, we're going to have to get used to having those conversations of, hey, I'm providing a value. As much as I would love to do this for free, I'm just, not at that point in my career yet. So, I have to get paid, and the seller's unwilling to pay. Would you be willing to pay? And I think there'll be conversations too. Let's say if our agent knows she's going to get the listing on the back end, maybe, hey, I won't take a buyer fee, but I want a full 3% commission on the sales side. So that's something else to consider as well.
Eric, let's also talk about something I saw earlier this week, maybe
Yeah.
last week. Exclusive buyer agent commission and the maximum commission. So you work with a buyer, an investor, and on that EBA, you say, look, I am asking for a 3%. They negotiate and said, look, I'm willing to pay you 2.5 or 2%, right? Or maybe even 1.5. If you find me a deal, bring it to me. At that percentage, whatever's listed on the exclusive buyer agency, as I understand it, even if the seller is offering 3%, 4%, or even 5% to the buyer's agent, whatever's listed on that EBA is the maximum commission that you can get paid. Have you heard about that?
Yeah. So whatever you sign, it is an up to, and it cannot
Yeah,
exceed
up
above.
to
So
or less. Yeah.
yep. So if you sign as an agent, if you sign an agreement saying that, hey, my commission is going to be 3%, and let's say, and I will say we've seen this down here in Tampa quite a bit, where the listing agent will offer 3% plus a $5,000 credit to get the property sold. Well, if I've got a exclusive buyer agreement at 3%, that's the most I can take. So for our agents in this meeting, you do not. I would do almost up to 4% or 5%, and I would let them know we're never going to get to that. But if for some reason a seller's offering 4% or 5%, you're crazy to think I'm not going to, take it if they're willing to pay it. Um, the chances of that aren't super likely, but it is possible. And I will say some of the conversations we've had uh, amongst some of the people at EXP in our group was, if you're working with an investor and you can find deals, you might write, an exclusive buyer agency saying, hey, I want paid 4 or 5%. And I'll go out and find properties that are sitting forever, and we'll write 50 contracts. And as long as the numbers make sense. So this could be, for a lot of people, a really big benefit for agents that know their worth and are willing to say, hey, I will give you white glove service. Like, you are going to be taken care of. Your deals are going to be great. I'm going to constantly feed you deals, but I want paid for what I'm doing for it. And that wasn't common before, because whatever was in the MLS, the agent was like, or the investor was like, hey, you're getting paid what the sellers decided. But that's starting to change in a good way.
Yeah. If you don't mind, let me talk about that, the
Yeah,
buyer's agreement. So there's benefits to both sides. I know we have investors and we have agents in here, and we have a mix of both, right? So
yep,
let me talk about the benefits of a bilateral protection and a partnership. So the exclusive buyer's agency is not basically just to protect the agent and for them to get a commission at the closing, right? It's also a handshake. It's a contract. It's saying, hey, I'm going to protect your interest. I'm going to look out for what you're trying to find out here. I'm going to sift through the bad deals, and I'm going to send you the good ones. And on the other side, from the investor, it's like, hey, you know what? I have somebody that's willing to work with me. I want to protect this relationship, grow it, and build it. We're just putting a framework around it. So I started off as a listing agent in this business, and we just had a listing appointment this afternoon. Um, Whenever we sit down, we have them sign the consumer guide to agency to explain our agency roles, at least in the state of Ohio here. And then also the listing agreement, whether it's a lease or a sale, even if it's one that's not going to hit the market publicly, we still have an agreement. Now, why do we work with our sellers and have an agreement, but always look to the buyers and say, I'm afraid to sit down and have that conversation? We need to look at every single buyer and every investor as a business partner, a client, a customer, and say, I have a higher standard. We have a contract. I want to go over this contract and explain the protections for both sides, because there really are protections on both sides of that.
yep. And I would say, I couldn't agree more to that. This is for both parties, like for the agent and for the investor in this. The agent, you're kind of getting a guarantee. There will be a non-exclusive buyer agreements as well. I already know of some that are kind of going around, so that'll be something too. As an investor, you don't have to tie yourself to one agent. So keep that in mind. Like, you don't have to, tie yourself to the agent, or you can do, I've even seen some agents will do like a 10-day or like a 5-day exclusive buyer agreement to go show a property. But that buyer agency spells out, for any reason, if the buyer agent isn't doing their responsibilities. Like, I know us as a team, we're going to list out what we'll do as buyers agents. We'll run comps, we'll have lists of inspectors and contractors, we'll have literally pretty much our entire buyer's packet that we give to buyers already. And we'll spell out and say, if any of these items aren't met, and it's like a 25-page presentation, you let us know, and we cut it immediately. We cut ties. So that's protecting the buyer, whether it's an investor or a retail buyer. And then on the flip side, I think we all as agents have been burned by some buyer who wants to go look at a property, and you go show it, and then you find out their mom is licensed and has never sold a property, but now she's going to be writing a contract. You're like, well, I just took the time to go show you this property. Like, where's this coming from? So um, there will be some ways that we see that navigated. But I think as an investor, again, I think it's something that is great because it's spelling out, like, we'll probably have a separate buyer agency agreement for our investors that spell out what will we do. Like, we'll go above and beyond. We'll kind of be boots on ground, and maybe they'll even be. I know some agents do listing tiers, so they do like 6% for full package, 5.5%. Maybe it's just photos, and then 5% for something that's more limited service. We might do that for investors now. We might say, hey, if you want kind of bare bones, we'll write offers for you, shotgun style. The most you'll ever have to pay max is 1%. For 2%, we'll do that and throw in some of our contacts. And then maybe like 3 or 4%, we'll do, boots on ground, help manage the project, do update videos. So there'll be some really cool ways that I think this will really shift, kind of that working relationship. Kind of break it up a little bit. Does anybody have any questions while we're talking about this? I don't want to, still got some points I want to hit, but does anybody, based off of what we've said so far, does anybody have any questions? I'll give it a second.
I'm also curious if anybody that's on here has had an experience with this, or questions from your investor. or the exclusive buyer's agreement, because that's really one of the biggest parts of it. What are your experiences out there? Are you having challenges?
Everybody's like, "No, we're good." Um, we'll continue on with this too, but I'll leave some time at the end for questions. I just want to try and break it up if we can. So if anybody has anything that comes up, feel free to like unmute yourself or do your raise the hand on Zoom to talk about it. I do think everything we kind of talked about right now, because me and Randy have been planning on talking about this topic for a while now. The reason we held off was we really wanted to jump onto it and have the conversation when it first came out, but they've already changed what this is going to entail and when it's going to happen and what it's going to look like 50 times. So, in 6 months, this recording could very much be, something nobody heeds the advice of. They could be like, well, great, like none of this is going to end up happening. But as it sits right now, the changes are kind of looking like they're going to happen. And I think there will be, for a benefit, some really good changes in the business. I really do. Even as an agent, I think this is really going to be a positive. And I think for consumers, I think there's going to be more protection. I think as agents, we're going to have to really be able to spell out our value, and same to investors if we can't spell it out.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to talk about two interesting things that I've seen since this all rolled out.
Yeah.
We call a lot of expired listings and for sale by owner listings from Zillow and other places. And two unique things that I've seen pop up recently. One, not somebody I called, not our market, but the gentleman listed his home for sale on Zillow and put all sorts of information about the NAR lawsuit and how he doesn't have to pay anymore. It went viral. I'm sure everybody's seen it by now, but it was very interesting. It was almost like the rants of somebody that's just been on, hasn't slept in 72 hours and then decided to list his house. It was very interesting to see that. So I think we're going to have some more uncertainty surrounding that and some very interesting things pop up. On the opposite spectrum, we called a gentleman here in Cincinnati. He has a home listed for 2.1 million in Hyde Park, and all signs point to it's overpriced, right? By at least a couple $100,000. However, this gentleman is not willing to list with an agent. He doesn't believe there's any value in the listing agent side of things. However, he sees that there's an opportunity to bring a great buyer, so he's paying 5% of 2.1 million to a buyer's
Nice.
agent to negotiate against his interest, which I thought was hilarious. When I listed it out like that, I said, you're paying somebody literally a six-figure salary to sell your house and negotiate against your interest. And he paused and said, yeah. Like he said, other people aren't going to pay buyer's agents, so I'm going to pay them more. And I
Crazy.
can't argue with that. That's solid value. Maybe they will have more incentive to bring you a buyer. So
Yeah.
there's both sides of that.
Yeah. And we've had a lot more. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, well, I was just gonna mention that I'm an investor. I've been investing since 2016 and I recently got licensed. So
Nice.
I just see this as like it's gonna be like you said, it's gonna be about communicating our value, like being able to negotiate more and really coming to something to kind of so the buyers do see the clear value. Because if I can negotiate 20,000 from the listing side, but they're only gonna pay me like $10,000 buyer's fee, that's nothing. Where if I can put the deal together where it works out for them. So I just see it's like an opportunity for people that really add value or can kind of come up with ideas to like communicate that value. Because yes, it's going to be harder, but it's at the same time, it's like buyers, there's people that buy now have money, so if they're out there, and yes, some might have less, but again, if we can come up with ideas and kind of like, it's like if I buy, it's like like when you're analyzing an investment property, you analyze it, it's calculated the risk. You have to kind of do your numbers. You have to come out with different exit strategies ahead of time. So now, as agents, that's something even though they're not investors, they're gonna have to do that if they really want to be able to kind of compete out there. Again, in my opinion, that's what I'm thinking.
No, and I think you're spot on. I think something else we'll probably see is a lot of agents, and I don't wish this on anybody, but there's going to be a lot of agents that probably leave the business as well, because this is going to change the way agents have to not only communicate their value, but it's going to change how they have to operate. And there's going to be, I've had a lot of conversations with agents that have been in the business, even agents that have been in the business for 20 years. And they're like, I don't want to deal with this. Like, I'm probably just going to be out of it. So I think the agents that are going to remain are going to be the ones that are open to communicating that value, open to kind of changing how things are going on. And then as investors, I see this as like there's going to be a group of investors who have no clue what's going on. There's going to be a group of investors that are they're maybe just, in it occasionally, and they're not going to be as worried about all of this or how to kind of almost game it. But I think there's going to be another group of investors that are going to be very smart with it, and they're going to realize kind of what, again, all of this is about, that are going to say, I can leverage these agents now who are looking to get more deals, who maybe, retail buyers aren't going to be out there as much. I can now leverage them to become my acquisitions team. They're going to be the ones that are going to be boots on the ground, looking for deals, going through all of the lists that are motivated sellers, talking to motivated sellers. So I think as an agent, you really hone your skills to get all of that taken care of, negotiate, talk to motivated sellers, find those lists, do everything like that. Then you can go to investors and say, look, like, I'm not, I'm for the right pay, I will do all of this stuff for you. Let's set something up. And that's almost what I did up in Cincinnati originally, with the flipper I worked with. I just said, hey, look, like, one way or another, I'd like to get paid, just so I'm not doing everything for free, but I'll become your acquisitions. I don't care. I'll go walk properties with, bed bugs and fleas. Like, I don't, that's okay with me. Let's figure it out. But, in the back end or through the buyer side, I want some sort of way to do it. And it got to the point where, like, I was the one that was bringing the folder and the contract and then going with the seller and saying, I can list your property and this is what it would look like, or I can offer you a cash offer. We can close in 7 days. This is what it would look like. What option do you prefer, A or B? And I had both available. And then when I would lock it up, I wouldn't have the seller pay the commission, the flipper would. And oftentimes they would. So I just think it's one of those things where we're just both investors and agents, and the people that are both are going to have to kind of change as it changes as well.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Ricardo, I actually just wanted to say that you bring up a good point here, about the underwriting of the deal, running the numbers. Generally when we sit down with someone that's selling a house, we will talk about their net sheet, the seller's net sheet, right? How much they're going to sell for, estimated, of course, and then what their mortgage balance is, what their taxes look like, what commissions look like, title company fees, transfer taxes, utilities, etc. Right? And at the end of that, generally we're pretty close if we know what our numbers look like, and we're within $1,000 or a couple $1,000 sometimes. We should be doing the same thing with our buyers. So partnering with our guys like Addison and our loan officers out there who work with investors and buyers and say, okay, here's what your numbers are actually going to look like. Because oftentimes buyers, even savvy investors, will get to the closing and have sticker shock and say, what is this? I can't pay all this. I didn't know this. So having those sit down education moments as investors and also as agents, we have to bring forward the information, lay it out in a way that makes sense, and also provide that as one of the pillars of the value that we have. You talk about value, bringing it forward, and a lot of agents are scared to talk about the value. Sometimes they'll throw up a meme of the 150 things agents will do for the buyers, but in all reality, we need to be voicing this, talking about it, just like a company or a corporation would, so we can solidify our stance in the market, attract the people who we want to work with.
Agreed. I couldn't agree more.
And I was going to mention, and related to this, one time what I was telling some agents that, like, just increase your network, like, increase your network. That's always good because you can add value through others. That's a big way. Yeah. So like, even for me, I was thinking now, instead of just flipping my own houses, I'll be able to maybe even help other people flip their houses in a way. Like, for example, they want to get a fixer upper. Maybe, and if they can qualify to get it, I can, coordinate the contractors, or maybe even throw in the project management fee. So it's kind of like that opens for me as an investor and as an agent. I see that that's going to open a lot of things. In addition to the commission, I can negotiate another commission for the project management and even other things. But again, it comes down to analyzing, laying it out before we get to that opportunity, you know?
Yeah.
So
No,
yeah.
absolutely. And I think as agents, like Gordon mentioned this at the beginning, but this kind of gives security to some agents, because if you have it listed and you're doing all that work and you're negotiating deals and you're going out and showing properties, you have some protection. But then again, as an investor, um, for example, one of the investors I work with in Tampa, he signed an exclusive buyer agreement and the agent didn't do any of what was listed in the exclusive buyer. And it was somebody that he was like, the agent was like, I'm not going to show you any properties till you sign it. So he signed it. It was like a 10-day, and the dude never sent any other properties, had no clue what he was doing. And it was a bad experience. So I think, finding those agents that you're going to be able to kind of, who's going to offer value, those are going to be the ones you're willing to pay. But if they're not offering value or doing anything like out of the ordinary, then obviously you're not going to want to pay them for the little bit of work they're doing at that point.
Yeah, you make a good point there. We have calls on investment listings that we have, and we will break the property down, show them the property, give them all the numbers, do a video FaceTime call if they're out of town. And then, the next morning we get a contract from that buyer from another brokerage. You're like,
Yeah.
what the heck did I do wrong? And I've had these conversations throughout my career, and it's like, we didn't do anything wrong. Basically, as an investor, I'm going to call everybody. My teacher, my mentor, my guru told me to call all the agents.
Yep.
And you guys are going to bird dog deals for me. So the more agents I have, the better. And as an agent, it's tough to want to work with somebody that's calling every other agent out there, right?
Yep.
You want some exclusive interaction with this individual. So in order to secure that and win big, you really have to show your value, follow up, do what you say you're going to do. And if it's on that exclusive buyer's agency, or if you verbalized it, just follow through. It's too easy. You follow up with a phone call, you send a couple properties from the MLS. It's going to take you 10, 15 minutes. Just do the thing that you said you're going to do and keep following up and tying them down
Yeah.
to making offers, tying them down to working with you, showing value, and then you'll be indispensable to them.
Yeah. And I think for both investors and agents, there's something to take out of that. If you're an agent, make yourself irreplaceable. So like if you're doing what every other agent is doing and there's nothing else that you're offering, then like why as an investor wouldn't I just call somebody else? Or why wouldn't I bounce around? Like if I feel like, and there's a lot of agents that they don't really offer much. They're just they're just what I call like door openers, and that's it. And they just, they're opening doors. Tell me what you think. Okay, what would you like to offer? Like we come from, very high value of like, we'll tell you what the scope of work is. We'll run comps. We'll get you the contractors. We'll line you up with hard money lenders. Get yourself irreplaceable as an agent. And then as an investor, I see this as like a huge benefit, because if there's like a go-to agent in your area that's like crushing it, and there's usually a couple, but like marry yourself up with one of them, go to somebody who is going to be a go-getter and say, look, I won't talk to another agent. I'll sign this exclusive for a year, but like, these are what I want you to do. Are you willing to do it? And then spell it out. And then maybe even have it in that exclusive buyer agreement that if any of it isn't taking place, then you can be released from it. But that way you're locking up an agent that's going to have your best interests, and it's going to do a really good job. So that way, hey, they're stuck to me at the hip. And it's a symbiotic relationship. That's why me and Randy kind of started all this. Was oftentimes investors and agents business overlap, and for whatever reason both groups of people kind of hate each other. So like most of the time I've seen like agents are like, investors are the worst, they're stupid, all they care about is money, this is so annoying. And most investors are like, agents are stupid, they're dumb, they don't know what they're doing. And it's like, that's just generalizing. Like there is some killer investors that have no problem paying people what they're worth and their value, and they know how to leverage the business. And then there's agents that know what they're doing, they know comps, they know the area, they're rock stars. Why? Like I've seen it personally in my business. When you partner with the right person or the right investor, it benefits both mutually more than you could ever imagine. Whereas if you try and do it by yourself, or if you try and kind of isolate yourself, it's really tough to make it work. So we've got 9 minutes or so. Does anybody have any questions on what we talked about? This is a conversation that could probably go on for 6 months. there's going to be a lot that's going to change. There's going to be a lot of differences. There's going to be a lot that I think best thing to do is stay on top of it. And if you're an agent, don't freak out. There's going to be some really good ways to leverage this change to grow your business. And if you're an investor, I wouldn't freak out. I'd see this as a huge benefit and start to see which ways you can leverage this to make it grow your business. But do we have any questions from anybody from the, could be questions about the lawsuit, could be questions about how they might be able to practice this in their business or anything?
If we don't have any questions, I actually have a unique point that investors and agents could do moving forward after this conversation that we're having today. And that's get an exclusive buyer's agency agreement. Read through it, decipher what it says, because it's not just one page says, hey, agent will work with a buyer, for a period of time and pay 3%. There's more intricacies to it. So get that. And as an investor, get that document, fill it out, and then send that to your agent and say, hey, look, I'm willing to work with you. I'm willing to work with you long-term and give you all my business, or at least a large portion of it. Here's my proactive approach. I've already got my buyer's agreement signed. Just put your name and broker number on there. I'm going to send that out to you. That shows a level of sophistication and trust and partnership that will make that agent turn around and say, whoa, what is this? Nobody's doing that. This guy's serious. I'm dropping everything. I'm sending this guy properties. I'm showing doors, whatever it is. So do something outside the box. Be proactive.
I like that. I think that's probably like one of the best tips ever. If you're an investor and you want an agent to like fully commit to you, fully commit to them, send it to them and say, hey, look, you're my go-to. Like, don't just do it to somebody random in your market though. Like find somebody you know. That might be a little awkward. But find somebody you know.
Have a conversation first, at least.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Do we have anything from anybody? Any questions or anything like that? Honestly, I thought this would be the.
I was gonna ask, could you list out the services that you would say would be invaluable to in those buyer relationships with investors or just buyers in general?
Yeah. Are you thinking on the like on the agent side, like what you think would help you stand out?
Yes, on the agent side.
Okay. I would say for sure, like the ability to run comps, but kind of detail out what that means. Connections. So like hard money lenders, contractors, property managers, Airbnb managers, any connection you can get in real estate. Make sure that you have, we have a vendor list, cleaners, repairmen, handymen, lawn service, anything you could possibly think about that like your investors have asked you about before. That's probably one of the biggest ones that I get from people. Extensive market knowledge. It's really tough to try and sell yourself if you're, new to an area or if you have no clue what's going on. When we moved back down to Tampa, the benefit was I grew up here. So even though I was, have only been here for a year, I've lived here my entire life before I moved back down. So I'm very familiar with the area, have lived all over. So I think that's a benefit. Construction knowledge is going to be huge. Like if you can run a scope of work, like I can't tell you how many times I've walked a property with an investor and they're like, and I don't know how to say this like in a way that doesn't come off kind of like egotistical, but like how, like you're amazing for being able to know how much is the drywall going to cost? What about the roof? Like I can give a pretty accurate scope, usually within 5 to 10% of a GC. Inspector knowledge. Contract knowledge is going to be huge. Like, what do you know about the contract? What do you know about the contingencies to get out of the contract? What can you use to protect them? How can you write the strongest contract? So just anything that you can really say, hey, this is where I shine and be able to leverage. Like there's a million different things, but just think about as an agent when you go through those kind of the benefits.
Yeah, that's a good point, Eric. I mean, knowing your contract is super important. Having that vendor list is super important. And as an agent or an investor, it always makes a lot of sense for you to go out and expand your network, ask for referrals, have a coffee, twice a week, 3 times a week. You're going to drink coffee anyway. Might as well be doing it with somebody that could potentially be a referral partner for you, right? So we do that same thing. And, it's interesting. you sit down and explain your values to somebody new, like a property manager or an investment company, or a team of uh, people that clean homes or do trash outs, and say, hey, this is what we do. Here's who we connect with. If you know anybody, please let me know. At that point, when they leave that coffee meeting, you're top of mind. Your value is extremely high, and almost every time they're going to find somebody and text you or call you and say, hey, by the way, you know what? I was thinking about our coffee. I have this. You said that you do X, Y, and Z. That's part of your value brand. I have somebody that could really use your services, and they'll pop up. So that makes a lot of sense. List out what you do. Have a great Rolodex of people, and share them. Send them referrals. Send them as many referrals as you possibly can. Show them value.
Good question though. I like that a lot.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I
I'm
was
gonna take
wondering I was wondering like how it relates to this. How like, because we can maybe negotiate a referral fee with each individual cleaner,
Mhm.
contractor, or even different like people that could add value even after the sale, right? But
Yeah.
then in a situation where we're involved, where it's a little bit more involved, how would you say, I know it depends on the scenario, but to kind of keep, because we don't want to like, it's a thin line between the roles we play as a real agents, right? And then as contractors or different roles, what would you guys say is like the best way to kind of be careful, you know what I mean, to keep them separate, just separate contracts, or and even though you're playing a role in the management or project management maybe. um
Yeah.
yeah, because that's what I'm
If you're
thinking
gonna
of now.
if you're gonna do the project management, I would do a separate contract than anything to do with the agency, and I'd probably have like separate. I would almost have like separate docs to it. Now, if you're just going to do like boots on the ground or check-ins or weekly checkups or progress photos or something like that, you could probably put that into just the buyer agreement. Like, hey, I'll check in on the property, maybe do some design work for you, maybe give you some design choices, tell you what's popular. But if you're actually like GCing or project managing, I would almost do that separate, just so there's not litigation in between. Like we have to be really careful where we step out of on the real estate side.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we do a lot of extra value added services for our investors, especially those ones that are out of the area.
Yeah.
Sometimes they ask us to line up contractor quotes and things like that. And in all reality, you're not getting paid. You're
Yep.
going to the property and saying, okay, this needs done, this needs done. And you're just working a little bit extra, but that's the value that you provide. And they're going to continue to work with you. When it comes to referral partners, I never want to put an agreement necessarily with dollar amount. So generally, unless we have some sort of formal partnership where we're going to work together on a very specific piece of business, my goal is generally saying, hey, I'm going to bring you as many clients as I can because I know you're a rock star and you do the best that you can in this one specific pillar of real estate, whatever that may be. And I'm going to bring you value without asking for money in exchange, in the hopes that you also find value and send people that my way.
Yep.
Thanks.
Good question. That is top of the hour. So appreciate everybody showing up. Thank you guys. Gordon, thank you for coming in. Really appreciate you. You're awesome. So I appreciate it. If anybody needs anything Gordon wise, I will plug his information into our Investor Agent Nation Facebook group. Absolutely reach out to him if you need an awesome agent in Cincinnati. Thank you everybody for showing up. Have a good week. Feel free to use the Facebook group. Like we're really wanting to kind of do as much as we can there. And then I think quick, I know I didn't do it. It'll get announced on the Facebook group. Randy's old podcast is getting kicked up. So all of these will be recorded in podcast form and put on there. And then they will be on EXP radio. So anybody that is a part of that, all of these will be on EXP radio and replayed through there. So have a great week. Excited to catch up with you guys in a month, and have a good one.
Thank you so much, guys. Thanks for having me on, Eric.
Absolutely, man. See
Yes,
ya.
sir. Have a great day. Be blessed.
You too.